Wound, Part 5, pages 61 through 76. The population of France at this time is 500,000. Let's keep it closer to that way. That's the policy of the Royal Cooperative. The people have decided to keep population growth low and have done so since near the founding on Winter Giving Day, December 21st, 800. The actual writ was ratified on Summer Giving Day Eve of 805. There hasn't been a violation of the one-child policy since the 10th century. People are well entrenched in the rules they themselves can change in a semi-autonomous Marseille. Where we went outward with area expansion through war, they went inward with technological advancement through peace. The last war was never fought, it was argued. One fortitude are the Sunday debates for fun among the subjects. They debate just to hone their discussion skills and self-representatives. Each debate lasts about an hour, and there are 5 a day before the weekend concludes. The debate is monitored and scored by crowd noise down in the paddock rounds of oration, whereby each side has 10 minutes of unhindered speech with rebuttals. This is like a deaf debate jam. It's not entirely for fun. The loser has to buy the winner a dinner. The cost is only about $5 for a gourmet steak that in our world would cost $100, but that's how it is when you keep your population down and your tech up. You could start your own homestead in the countryside and get a voucher for up to 5 children to work the land. Most dudes are excited enough to date 18-year-old women at 35. And an avouchment of ordnance. The castle is largely a huge indoor town with the size of Olympia, Washington. Every city-sized building is the same size or smaller by averages. The most populous castle is Athens, with 100,000 people. This is capital city of the cooperative. Each country averages out at 3 or 4 city castles, and to travel each country averages out at 3 or 4 city castles, and to travel is to love. The castles look like villas, or in other words, they look like very tall, scrawny houses. They're actually quite thick from bum to cabeza. Nothing exuberant, just the chateau. Don't fret the music. It's just the harpsichord equivalent of Avenged Sevenfold meets Tool in terms of tempo and note variants. Then we'll go eat a rustic meal of Chateaubriand, new potatoes, and a vegetable pairing with a dram of Zinfandel for $2.50. Nobody here looks 25th century, and yet 800 years ago saw a city on the moon and a Mars landing. You get the feel of a time machine went in 2 directions at once. They're winding up their cars like toys, and yet they're zipping out of the buildings at 1,500 miles per hour. Marseille 1200 is an aberrance. 400 million Homo sapiens from pole to pole wouldn't have a clue how not to pity your unfortunate breath. You'd be issued a stipend and a choice between Traveler's Lodge or an apartment. Fresh out of the hit sitcom Frasier with $200 left each month, where a meal is 20 times less than $500 video game system, and all other purchases would cost half as much. That $200 on food would press as $4,000 a month, with a year to work it all down before a reboot. Your dinner parties would net you a friend base in no time. Very quirky place for an outsider, and yet a very logical site to peer the dreams of progression. The mindset of cooperates is that everything, even philosophy, can be put into a scientific context and can be examined through science. The trouble with religion is that the minute you begin doubting the metaphysical view, especially God, by remembering bad times prior to good time, you feel a sense of liberation from the spiritual trap of doubting the doubtful, and a secular reasoning towards more and more hypocrisy. There's a freedom of not being part of the crowd. Socrates is often doubted as a ritual practice because once you have science, you don't need Socrates. Science is the framework of Socrates. It's the rituals and practice that forms the Socrates house. Most people these days would rather build their own house around the scientific framework. In the real world, the previous seems like a tautology given that most everyone in most cities lives in the same building. There are smaller towns with tiny houses and large plots of land. There are big houses with small plots of land. The castle is a community and living is free. Everyone receives the same stipend of a lot of food and enough to pay for rent with a little left over after you're in a furnished place that looks exquisite. The children of the marquises and marquises are barons and baronesses. Their grandchildren are not nobles. They have no title other than lord and lady. The marquises and marquises' grandchildren are still babies. The marquises and marquises have 2 sons. That's the figure, I think. "20 nobles live in Castle Marseille. The top section is for the royals. Again, anyone is free to leave Castle Marseille for a simpler life indeed. The marquises and marquises are in charge of the city of Marseille, which is basically this one building. The counts and countesses manage a county, of which there are 3 counties here. The duchy is managed by the duke and duchesses. There are 5 boroughs in the castle for barons and baronesses. All the nobles are elected for a life term unless deposed or they abdicate. There's no nepotism because the county doesn't become a duke if his father dies and he's the oldest. A count does not become a duke if his father dies and he's the oldest. The baron is not the son of the marquis. Wait a minute. Let's start with a duke and his father, because a count does not become a duke if his father dies and he's the oldest. Their spouses also become senator nobles. Upon death, a new senator noble is elected. Now that part doesn't make any sense. The spouses are also senator nobles. Castle Marseille has 5 neighborhoods, each led by a baron or baroness. Dukes and duchesses lead what we would call a state. Here they're called the duchy. Counts and countesses lead counties, and marquises lead a municipality, or cities in our definition. Neighborhoods are called boroughs. France itself has 7 big municipalities. Those are Paris, Lyon, Bordeaux, Nice, and Marseille. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's say 5. Sorry, I'm correcting this as I go along. I made some mistakes and contradicted myself. 5 big municipalities. 1, 2, 3, 4. 5 big municipalities. There are Paris, Lyon, Bordeaux, and Nice, and Marseille. The kingdom, and sometimes queendom, is divided into, again, 5 principalities. The population of France at this time is, again, 500,000. Smaller than most major cities on the globe in our timeline, and yet 800 years before us, the French army launched a vessel to Mars, and a global direct democracy has a compact city of 500,000. On the moon. $50,000. That's a mess up. 50,000 on the moon. Whilst an international cooperative lives in unity and jointly are producing an antimatter in one of 4 hadron colliders for a ship that will travel twice the speed of light in a warp bubble, exciting a population that routinely lives past 150 years by eating recycled trash. The world royalty are elected by the people, and only a Senate of kings. Nope. Eating recycled trash. And only a Senate of kings in an uneven number, so there is never a tie. Things get done, and the people have a final voice in the matters of every day. So, warp bubble, exciting a population that routinely lives past 150 years by eating recycled trash. Only a Senate of kings and queens in an uneven number, so as there is never a tie, things get done, and the people have a final voice in the matters of every day. No one has a larger piece of the pie, though some have smaller on their own accord to explore the rural areas as to live a simpler life. Castle Marseille is five times, we'll have to check this, 5 times the volume of Burj Khalifa in Dubai. So check that. The volume of Burj Khalifa in Dubai. The castle is well equipped to house over 100,000 people. 50,000 live in Castle Marseille with apartments for 100,000. The mall is every bit as impressive as the Mall of America. Gray Sledge Recycling makes many consumer products, from computers to stuffed animals and flying cars in many styles. The University of Marseille, though indoors, has an outdoorsy look with live plants and animals. Think Princeton, but more beautiful and lusher and green. There are parks and woods right inside the castle. There's a massive library larger than any in New York City. There are exercise facilities from an unbelievable huge workout center in each of the 5 neighborhoods across. There are many exquisite, though cheap restaurants 20 times less expensive than ours. There's horse riding through plains and faux mountains. There's a massive planetarium with holographic features, movable by hand. There's professional sports teams in baseball, basketball, football, and hockey that are all unique. Their version of basketball involves kicking. The baseball is cricket with elements of pool and chess. The football analog has musical chairs put into it, and the ball is a disc like frisbee golf. Finally, their hockey is doused with MMA fighting. The penalty is called with a bubble wand 3 feet long and oblong. They're also into BattleBots, but 2-on-2. With guns and riot gear. It's brutal. Men and women play on the same teams. Soccer is also there, except the ball is punched from a crouching position while running. The goalie kicks and carrying is allowed in the last 2 yards. Everyone is housed in the same size apartment with the exact same design. The royalty is no different, except they live on the highest level with their family of 1 child allowed by law, like everyone else, and ordained appropriate by the vast majority. I think earlier we said there were 2, so that can't be. So we'll just go with 1. When you go back to edit it, remember that there's only 1 baron, because that's the son of the Marquise, and they have 1 child policy. The world is like the 5th element in terms of technology, except with building that's got the external feel of a French version of a sleepy German village, like the design of Leavenworth, Washington, except French. It's cute but difficult to explain. The year is 1200, and the architecture of houses reflects the style of chateaus. It would be like if an American house was miles tall, and many times the floor area of the tallest building on earth. The Castle Marseille is 1,500 stories tall. I guess you could say the structure is a giant pagoda in the style of 13th century French house. Its jaw-dropped, tears-dripping gorgeous. We experienced the Renaissance beginning about 1420. In this scenario, the Roman Empire did not fall in 476. By 48 BC, the world had begun to sway towards Alexandria, after Caesar failed to attack the library at Alexandria when it was revealed that Caesar had originally planned to sack the center of knowledge, though got sidetracked by a freak storm. The Socrati in Greece heard about this affront to wisdom and began to attract a swarm of new adherents, unexpectedly growing into a religion. The Nucleus, as their church began to be called, the Socratian Nucleus, sponsored great pilgrimages to Alexandria to read at the library. By the time Rome fell to Germania, there was a direct democracy in league with the monarchy forming from Greece to Egypt. There were changes in literature and architecture we didn't see in our world until the 1420s. Charlemagne spread peace and unity. By 1200, there was democratic socialism, flying cars, and food recycling into almost everything people ate, with a society without fuel source built on torque. There are 7 of these exact mega castles in France. Each castle is a different looking chateau that is distinct 1200s France. In our time period, Dante would have written in this century. The Terran version was written in the early 6th century, and it was from the Socratic perspective with neither heaven nor hell. It involves a Caesarian dictatorship in its 2500th year as a dynasty, an oppressed, complacent population in the future, and a moon still not explored by 2000 AD. Pertinax Abad's Dystopia, Psychosis, and Luna were published in the 530s AD from Alexandria. He was a deep Socratic. His novels drew in many to the doctrine that solidified after 1,000 years of languish and a nuance to the power. Empires began to go Socratic around this time en masse thanks to Abad and his poem. Yes, a version of rap played to a beat. The poem together is 3 books to form the epic volume called Revolution, and it caused exactly that, a revolution, an ABC meter. The poem is rapped on stage with music, though Abad is not regarded as a playwright since the play did not make it to the stage until the 700s after a couple centuries only read by fans quietly. The play was said to have moved Charlemagne to tears that in 800 when the monks met with him at a library in underground Paris he swore to unite the world under the banner of the 5 Socratic precepts of science. 1. Observation. 2. Experimentation. 3. Skepticism. 4. Falsification. And 5. Verification.